Tycoon left wife after saying baby wasn't his, then met his son at a charity event. The sky was painted in hues of pink and orange, the sun casting its final, tender rays over the horizon as the evening air settled into a quiet, almost reverent calm. At the heart of the bustling city, nestled between the opulence of towering skyscrapers and the simple charm of cobblestone streets, there stood a grand hotel. The evening was young, and the lights inside flickered like 1,000 tiny stars, each reflecting the promises of the life that awaited within. But for her, everything seemed distant, out of reach. Her name was Isabella, a woman whose heart was too big for the world she found herself in. Isabella had never imagined that she would meet him here, in this place. She had always been an idealist, her life led by the steady rhythm of her quiet, humble existence. Yet, tonight was different. Tonight, she was standing on the precipice of something she couldn't quite name. As she made her way into the ballroom, her eyes were drawn to him immediately. It was impossible not to notice him. He exuded a quiet power, a presence that commanded attention without a single word. Alexander Dumont. The name alone was enough to make people stop in their tracks. He was everything she wasn't. He was the embodiment of wealth, of ambition, of every dream she had ever had and feared. He stood with the grace of a king, his tailored suit a perfect fit for his broad shoulders, his hair dark and slicked back. His eyes, however, were what drew her in. They were a stormy blue, deep and intense, as if the world could not weigh him down. And yet, as they locked eyes across the room, something shifted. Something delicate, fragile, and yet undeniable stirred between them. There was a pull, a magnetic force that neither of them could explain. For a brief moment, the noise of the crowd faded, and in that instant, they were alone. She could feel her heart racing, a sharp contrast to the calm exterior she had learned to wear for so many years. He took a step toward her, and with every movement, the world seemed to grow smaller, more intimate, as if he was the only person who truly mattered. He extended his hand, his fingers warm against her skin as she hesitated for a split second before taking it. "Isabella," he said, his voice deep, like velvet wrapping around her. "What brings you to such an extravagant event?" His smile was confident, charming, too perfect, almost, but his gaze was something different. There was a curiosity in his eyes, a question he was silently asking without saying a word. She swallowed, suddenly aware of the weight of her dress, the small imperfections in her posture that she had never cared about before, but now felt painfully exposed. I'm here with a friend," she stammered, the words escaping her lips in a rush. "She insisted that I come. It's beautiful here, isn't it?" He raised an eyebrow, studying her in a way that made her feel as though he could see straight through the layers she had carefully built. "Beautiful? Yes. But not as beautiful as you." Her breath caught in her throat at his words. She had heard compliments before, from men who thought nothing of throwing out empty flattery, but something about his words, his presence, made them feel real. It wasn't just the words that hit her, it was the way he said them, as if he truly believed them. She flushed, looking down at her hands, suddenly feeling shy. The glow of the chandelier above them seemed to be too bright now, too overwhelming. And yet, she couldn't tear her eyes away from him. I don't know what to say," she whispered, barely audible over the rising hum of the crowd around them. "You don't have to say anything," he replied softly, leaning in just enough for her to feel the warmth of his breath on her cheek. "Not yet." The rest of the night passed in a blur. The crowd was a blur, their laughter and conversations a distant hum in her ears. All that mattered was him, his smile, the way he listened to her, the way he made her feel like she mattered in a world that often overlooked people like her. She was caught between disbelief and something much deeper, something that made her question the life she had been living. As the night wore on, Isabella found herself alone with him on the balcony, the cool night air brushing against her skin as they looked out over the city below. The lights shimmered in the distance, reflecting a world she had never truly known. She had always been content with her simple life, her quiet existence, but here, with him, the world seemed endless, full of possibilities she had never dared to imagine. He turned to her, his expression soft but intense, as if weighing something heavy in his heart. "Isabella," he began, his voice suddenly more serious, "tell me about yourself. I want to know everything. She hesitated. The words didn't come easily. She was used to being the observer, not the one being observed. But something about him, his genuine interest, made her want to open up. She had spent so many years building walls, hiding behind the expectations of others, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen. There's not much to tell, she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. I've always been ordinary. Just a girl from a small town, trying to make it in the world. He reached out, his hand gently lifting her chin so their eyes met once again. Ordinary? He smiled softly. I don't believe that for a second. Her heart fluttered, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something more, something beyond the life she had always known. Her phone buzzed late one evening, the familiar sound snapping her from her thoughts. She stared at the screen for a moment, her heart skipping a beat when she saw his name flash across it. Alexander. She hadn't expected to hear from him again, not so soon. She had convinced herself it had been a fleeting moment, a moment shared in the excitement of a luxurious event. But here he was, reaching out, as though he had never left. Isabella, his text read, simple, yet somehow loaded with meaning. I can't stop thinking about you. Her fingers trembled as she typed her reply, her mind a whirl of emotions. She wasn't sure what to say, but the longing in her heart made the words flow before she could stop herself. I didn't expect to hear from you again. The response came almost immediately. I know. But there's something about you, something I can't shake. Can I see you again? Tomorrow night? She stared at the screen, her breath shallow. Her mind screamed at her to be cautious. She had seen men like him before, men with charm and smiles that masked their true intentions. But there was something different about Alexander. She could feel it. She could feel his sincerity, even in the distance of their messages. Before she could talk herself out of it, she typed back. Yes. I'd like that. The next evening, the sky was dimming, and Isabella was already on edge. She had dressed carefully, nothing too extravagant, nothing too casual, but still, as she stood in front of her mirror, she wondered if it was enough. Would he like the way she looked? Or would he see her as just another woman to add to his collection of admirers? The car ride to the restaurant was a blur, the city lights passing by as she tried to calm her racing heart. She had done this before, dressed up, prepared herself to meet a man who might never understand her. But this time was different. It wasn't about the glamour or the status. It was about something deeper, something that scared her more than she wanted to admit. When she arrived, the restaurant was everything she had expected, opulent, with soft lighting and hushed conversations. The maitre d' led her to the private corner table where Alexander was already waiting. He stood when he saw her, his eyes lighting up as if seeing her for the first time. His smile was warm, genuine, and Isabella couldn't help but feel a rush of relief. You came, he said softly, his voice a low murmur. I didn't want to disappoint you, she replied, her words tinged with a hint of nervousness. But he didn't seem to notice. They exchanged pleasantries, but all the while, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that something was different this time. The air between them seemed heavier, as if the weight of unspoken words hung in the balance. She couldn't bring herself to ask what was really going on between them, but it was becoming increasingly hard to ignore the pull that was growing stronger with every passing second. As they spoke, she noticed how his gaze never seemed to waver from her. It wasn't just polite interest, it was something more, something intense, as though he were looking for answers within her. She had never felt so exposed. Isabella, he said suddenly, his voice serious now, almost as if testing the waters. I need to ask you something. She looked at him, her heart skipping a beat. What is it? He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together, his expression unreadable. Why do you think I keep coming back to you? Her breath caught in her throat. The question felt too direct, too personal. She opened her mouth, unsure of what to say. Was he just intrigued by her, or was there something more at play? She had no answers, only questions. I don't know, she whispered, her gaze dropping to the glass in front of her. She wasn't sure if she was afraid of his answer or afraid of the truth she might find in herself. He exhaled slowly, and she could see the tension in his shoulders. You don't know? Really? His voice was softer now, almost vulnerable. Because I've never been able to stop thinking about you since we met. Every time I try to push you out of my mind, something pulls me back. And it scares me. She looked up at him, meeting his gaze for the first time in what felt like forever. His eyes were searching hers, pleading with her for something she couldn't define. Why, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because I think I'm falling for you, he said, the words leaving his mouth with a sense of finality, as if saying them out loud might make them real. Isabella's heart stopped. For a moment, time stood still, and everything around her disappeared. She had never expected him to say those words, not in this way, not so soon. She had thought that maybe, just maybe, they shared something special, but she never imagined he could feel this deeply, this quickly. I don't know what to say, she replied, her voice trembling. She could feel the weight of his confession settling on her chest like 1,000 bricks. It was too much, too soon. But deep down, a part of her, a part she had long buried, wanted to believe it. He leaned back in his chair, his expression guarded now, as if he were waiting for her to reject him. You don't have to say anything, he said softly. I just wanted you to know how I feel. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions taking over. He was a man who had everything, wealth, power, influence, but he was giving her something more, something vulnerable. And yet, here she was, unsure of what to do with it. The evening stretched on, each passing minute feeling like an eternity. Words were exchanged, but neither of them could escape the undercurrent of uncertainty that had settled between them. Isabella felt torn, between what she wanted and what she was afraid to acknowledge. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to believe in what he was offering? But with every encounter, every smile, every gentle touch, there was an underlying tension. She felt it, and though she tried to ignore it, it seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. The words he had spoken, the confession of falling for her, echoed in her mind constantly. She didn't know how to process them. He had confessed too soon, too intensely. It felt as if she was drowning in a sea of emotions she wasn't ready to swim through. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the world outside seemed to glow with an almost surreal beauty, she found herself standing at her apartment window, staring out at the city. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she glanced at the screen. It was him. Isabella, I need to see you tonight. Please. I have something important to tell you. Her heart skipped a beat, the familiar tension creeping up her spine. She hadn't seen him in 3 days, and despite the yearning in her chest, she wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever he needed to say. But there was something about him, something that always made her want to run towards him, even when every instinct screamed at her to stay away. All right, she typed back, her fingers trembling slightly as she hit send. She wasn't sure if she was making a mistake, but she couldn't help herself. When she arrived at the restaurant where they had agreed to meet, she found him waiting outside, his dark suit perfect as always. But his eyes, they were different tonight. There was something unreadable in them, something that made her uneasy. He was standing there, pacing slightly, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Isabella, he said when he saw her approach, his voice strained. I'm glad you came. I didn't have much of a choice, she replied with a small, forced smile, trying to mask the flutter of nerves in her stomach. You said it was important. He nodded, but there was a distance in his demeanor that hadn't been there before. I don't know how to say this, he began, his voice faltering slightly as he ran a hand through his hair. But I think I owe you the truth. Her pulse quickened. She could feel it in the air, the weight of his words hanging like a storm cloud above them. What's going on, Alexander? He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for the inevitable storm that was about to hit them both. I've been lying to you. And I hate myself for it. Her heart sank, confusion rushing through her like a tidal wave. Lying? What do you mean? He turned away, his back to her for a moment, as though he couldn't bear to face her. When he finally spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion, barely audible. "I'm not who you think I am, Isabella. I never was." She blinked, trying to process his words. "What do you mean?" He finally met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw the raw vulnerability in his eyes. "You know I told you that I had fallen for you, that I wanted this, with you." He hesitated, his hands clenching at his sides. "But the truth is, I was never ready for this. For you. I've been pushing you away, even when I was close to you." Isabella felt the ground beneath her feet shift, as if the world she had so carefully constructed around this fragile connection was crumbling. She couldn't breathe. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I made a mistake." He stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper now. "I thought I could keep you at arm's length, keep you from getting too close. But the more I tried to push you away, the more I realized I couldn't. And I should have told you the truth from the beginning." Isabella swallowed, her throat dry. "The truth about what?" He shook his head, his expression filled with regret. "The truth about everything. I've been hiding behind my wealth, my status, my power. But when it comes to you, I've been afraid." He paused, his eyes searching hers for understanding. "I was afraid that if I let you in, I'd lose control. I've always controlled everything in my life, my business, my image, my world, but with you, I felt powerless." Her chest tightened, her emotions a tangled mess. She had known that there was something more beneath the surface, something he hadn't told her, but she hadn't expected this. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. But in trying to protect myself, I ended up hurting you more than I ever could have imagined." He reached out to touch her arm, his fingers barely grazing her skin. "I've been lying to you about my feelings. About everything. I never meant to keep you in the dark, Isabella." Her mind raced, trying to make sense of his words, but it felt like she was caught in the middle of a storm. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he had hurt her, how much she had given of herself only to find that he had been hiding pieces of his soul from her. But instead, she remained silent, her emotions swirling inside her. "And what now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happens now?" He took a step back, his eyes clouded with regret and uncertainty. "I don't know. But I want to try. I want to make this right, Isabella. I can't undo what I've done, but I want to be honest with you from now on. No more lies. No more games." Isabella's heart wavered. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but the wound he had caused was deep, and she wasn't sure if she could trust him again. "I don't know if I can believe you," she said, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. "How do I know that this isn't just another lie? That you're not just saying what I want to hear?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at her, as if weighing the weight of her words. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and sincere. "I can't promise that I won't make mistakes. But I can promise that I'll try. For you. For us." Isabella spent her days lost in thought, replaying the conversation over and over. She had been angry, frustrated with herself for even considering giving him another chance. But deep down, something she couldn't name, kept her from walking away completely. Maybe it was the sincerity in his eyes, the way he had poured his heart out to her, or maybe it was the idea of what they could be if they both dared to open up fully. She didn't know. All she knew was that she couldn't get him out of her head. One evening, as she sat on the couch of her small apartment, the phone buzzed on the coffee table. She reached for it, knowing exactly who it was before even glancing at the screen. Alexander. The message was simple, yet it caused her heart to race. "I need to see you. Tonight. Please." She stared at the words for a long moment, feeling that familiar pull in her chest. She hadn't seen him in nearly a week, and though she had promised herself she wouldn't let him worm his way back in, the desire to hear his voice, to understand the raw emotion behind his eyes, was too strong. With a sigh, she typed her reply. I'll meet you in 30 minutes. Same place? Yes. I'll be waiting. The cold night air wrapped around her as she walked toward the restaurant where they had agreed to meet. Her heart hammered in her chest, but it wasn't from the cold. It was the anticipation, the anxiety of what awaited her. She wasn't sure what she wanted, but she knew that she couldn't keep running from the feelings that kept swirling inside her. When she arrived, she saw him immediately. He was standing outside, his posture tense, but as soon as their eyes met, a flicker of relief washed over him. He stepped toward her, his face softening, and she felt her own breath catch in her throat. I'm glad you came, he said, his voice low and gentle. But there was something in the way he spoke, something urgent that made her heart skip a beat. I didn't have much of a choice, she replied with a small, shaky smile, trying to hide the nervousness she felt. You made it pretty clear you needed to talk. He nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. I do. There's something I've been keeping from you, and I can't hold it in anymore. She swallowed hard, the air between them suddenly thick with expectation. What is it? I've been lying to myself, he began, his voice breaking slightly, as if the words were hard to form. I've been so afraid of losing control, of letting myself fall, that I pushed you away. But the truth is, I was terrified of needing you, of letting myself care for you. Isabella's heart thudded in her chest. She had expected more words, more explanations, but not this raw vulnerability that was completely unlike the man she thought she knew. I don't understand, she whispered, shaking her head. Why now? Why are you telling me this? Alexander reached out, his hand gently brushing her arm, a gesture of both comfort and desperation. Because I can't keep hiding from what I feel, Isabella. I can't keep pretending I don't want this, don't want you. You've changed everything for me, and I don't know how to let go of that, even if it terrifies me. His words hit her like a wave crashing against the shore, unrelenting and fierce. She had never seen him like this, so open, so lost in his own emotions. For a moment, she was speechless, her mind scrambling to process everything he had just laid out before her. You're not the only one who's afraid, she finally said, her voice trembling with emotion. I'm afraid, too. Afraid of what this could mean, afraid of being hurt. I don't know if I can just trust you again. How do I know you're not just saying what I want to hear? He stepped closer, his hand now resting lightly on her shoulder, his thumb brushing her skin in a soothing motion. I don't have all the answers. I can't promise that things will be perfect, but I can promise you this, I'll never lie to you again. And I'll spend every day proving that I'm not the man I was before. Not with you. She looked at him, the intensity in his eyes pulling her in like a magnet. His words were sincere, but the scars from their past still lingered in her heart, like a shadow that wouldn't quite disappear. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that he had changed. But could she? Could she let herself go completely, knowing how easily it could all slip away again? I don't know if I can do this, Alexander, she whispered, the weight of her own vulnerability making it hard to breathe. I want to believe you, but I don't know if I can. I've been hurt too many times before. I know, he said, his voice barely audible, filled with a tenderness that made her chest tighten. And I'm sorry. But I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I'm different. That I'm worthy of your trust. The silence that followed was heavy, as both of them stood there, suspended in a moment that felt like it could break them both. The world around them seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them standing at the precipice of something they couldn't control, something they couldn't predict. Isabella closed her eyes for a moment, the pain of their past and the hope of their future swirling together in a confusing, beautiful mess. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, could feel the sincerity in his words. And yet, something inside her remained hesitant. I don't know if I'm ready for this, she finally said, her voice breaking slightly. But maybe we can try. His face softened, and for a brief moment, she saw the man she had hoped he would be, the man who had shown her kindness, who had been vulnerable and honest in a way she hadn't thought possible. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. And in that moment, Isabella knew that they had crossed a line, one that would take them to a place neither of them could predict. The future was uncertain, and there were no guarantees. But for the first time, she was willing to step into the unknown, to let herself believe that there could be something real between them. She spent days trying to focus on her work, trying to push the thoughts of him out of her mind, but it was impossible. Everywhere she went, she felt his presence in the back of her mind. His smile. The way he had looked at her, not with the sharp calculation she had expected, but with something softer, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. And then, one evening, her phone buzzed again. The message was brief but heavy with implication. "I need to see you. There's something I haven't told you yet." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Alexander. It was always Alexander, wasn't it? She had been dreading this moment, dreading the inevitable. He had promised to be honest with her, but she had no idea what he could possibly need to confess now. Was this more than what he had already told her? Was there something worse that he had been hiding all along? With trembling fingers, she typed back, "I'll meet you." She didn't want to, not because she didn't care, but because she feared that whatever truth he was about to reveal would shatter the fragile bond they had begun to rebuild. Still, she couldn't stop herself. He had called her, and a part of her knew she had to face whatever came next. When she arrived at the place he had chosen, an upscale cafe on the edge of the city, the atmosphere was thick with a certain tension she could taste in the air. The moment she walked in, she spotted him immediately. He was sitting at a table in the corner, his posture stiff, his eyes distant, as if lost in some silent battle within himself. There was something different about him now. The warmth she had felt from him before was gone, replaced with an unspoken heaviness that made her chest tighten. "Isabella," he said softly when he saw her, standing up quickly, his face a mixture of both relief and regret. "Alexander," she replied, her voice barely a whisper as she walked toward him. "What is it? What did you need to tell me?" He took a deep breath, his hands visibly shaking as he gestured for her to sit down. There was no warmth in his touch, no tenderness as there had been before. Just raw tension. The air between them felt thick, almost suffocating. "I've been thinking about everything we've said," he started, his voice low, strained. "And I can't help but feel like I'm not being entirely honest with you. I haven't told you everything." Isabella froze. She knew this was coming. There was always going to be more. "What is it this time, Alexander? I've listened to your words, I've tried to believe you, but I don't know how much more of this I can take." "I know," he said, his eyes filled with deep regret. "And I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. The thing is, there's a part of my past that I've kept hidden from you. A part of me that's been weighing on me for a long time now." Her heart sank. She could feel the blood drain from her face as she braced herself for whatever he was about to say. "What do you mean? What part of your past?" He hesitated, swallowing hard as if the words were stuck in his throat. "Before I met you, I was married," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to hurt you. But I can't keep running from the truth. I was married to someone else, and we have a son together." Isabella's mind went blank. Her chest tightened, and the room seemed to spin around her. She felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet, and suddenly, she was drowning in confusion, disbelief, and a deep, gnawing pain. "What?" she whispered, the word barely leaving her lips. "You have a son? But you never mentioned this before." He lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. "I didn't want to. I didn't want you to think I was lying to you, or that my past would get in the way of what we could have. I've been running from it for years, and I didn't want you to be caught up in it." Isabella's mind was racing, the images of everything they had shared flashing through her head, the trust they had built, only to find that it had all been built on a lie. "So, all this time, while we've been getting closer, you've been hiding your son from me?" Her voice cracked, the pain in her words palpable. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes filled with guilt. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I was selfish. I thought that if I kept you away from my past, I could protect you from all of this, from the mess I've created. The tears in Isabella's eyes were threatening to spill over, but she refused to let them fall. She was angry, hurt, and confused all at once. The man she had started to trust, the man she had begun to believe in, had been lying to her this whole time. She had let herself fall for him, only to discover that he had been keeping a part of himself locked away, hidden from her. "I don't know what to say, Alexander," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I don't know how I'm supposed to deal with this. How can I believe anything you say now? How can I trust you?" "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't expect you to understand. But I need you to know that I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to make things right. I know I've messed up, I know I've hurt you, but I'm here now, and I want to fix it. I want to fix us." She stared at him, her mind in turmoil, her heart torn between the part of her that wanted to believe him and the part of her that felt betrayed. Could she forgive him? Could she trust him again after everything he had hidden from her? "I don't know if I can," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Alexander. You've kept so much from me. You've lied to me." "I know," he said, his voice low with regret. "And I'm sorry. I can't undo what I've done, but I swear, I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I'm not the man I was. I'll do anything to make things right." The silence stretched between them, both of them caught in a painful limbo, unsure of what the future would hold. Isabella wanted to scream, to run, to push him away and never look back. But she couldn't. She couldn't ignore the part of her that still felt something for him. She could feel the raw emotion in his voice, the weight of his regret pressing against her, but it wasn't enough. It couldn't be. How could it be? How could she forgive him for keeping something like this from her, something so monumental, when it felt like everything they had built together was nothing but a fragile illusion? "Why didn't you tell me before?" she finally asked, her voice hoarse, barely a whisper. "Why now, Alexander? Why wait until I've already opened myself to you?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out at first. The look on his face was one of sheer torment, the kind of pain that seemed to swallow him whole. "I was afraid," he said, his voice breaking, as if the admission itself was more painful than the truth of what he had kept hidden. "I didn't want you to see me as I really am. I thought if I told you, you would never look at me the same way. I thought I could protect you from the mess I've made of my life." Isabella felt a stab of hurt. "Protect me? You think hiding this from me was protecting me?" Her voice cracked, and she quickly wiped away the tears that had begun to spill over. "You've been lying to me, Alexander. All this time, you've been hiding your son, your past, and expecting me to just accept it. How could you expect me to do that?" "I didn't want to hurt you," he pleaded, his voice desperate now, his eyes filled with regret. "I thought I could fix it all. That I could be the man you saw in me. But I'm not him. I never was. I've been trying to be perfect, to be what you wanted me to be, but I wasn't being honest with you, and I know now that was a mistake. A huge mistake." Isabella shook her head, feeling a sense of betrayal so deep it almost choked her. "And what about your son? What about the life you left behind, the family you left behind? What am I supposed to do with that?" She couldn't stop the anger from rising in her chest. "You've kept me in the dark about the most important part of your life. You've let me fall for you, only to find out that I'm not even a part of the reality you've been hiding. I don't even know who you are anymore." "I know," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I've made a mess of everything. And I don't blame you for being angry. But I need you to understand something. I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. I was just so afraid of facing my past. I thought if I kept running from it, it wouldn't affect you. But now, I see how wrong I was." Isabella's mind was spinning, every word he spoke adding to the confusion that had taken root deep inside her. She wanted to scream, to shout at him, to tell him how much he had hurt her, how much she felt betrayed by his lies. But the words didn't come. Instead, all she could do was sit there, staring at him, feeling the weight of everything they had shared come crashing down around them. "Why did you let me fall for you, Alexander?" she finally whispered, her voice shaking. "Why didn't you stop me when you knew all along that you had this other life? Why didn't you tell me before, when it could have mattered?" He closed his eyes for a moment, taking a slow, steadying breath as if trying to find the right words. When he opened them again, there was a vulnerability in his gaze that sent a shiver down her spine. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you. And when I realized what was happening, when I realized how much I cared about you, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could keep my past hidden, keep it buried, and have something real with you. But that was wrong. I should have been honest from the start. You deserve better than that." The room felt like it was closing in on her. The man she had believed in, the man she had allowed herself to trust, had been hiding something so monumental, something that changed everything. She didn't know how to feel anymore. She didn't know if she was even capable of feeling the same way about him, knowing that he had been carrying this secret all along. She wanted to feel anger, but all she felt was emptiness, a hollow ache that seemed to expand with every word he spoke. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice barely audible, the vulnerability in her tone surprising even herself. "I don't know if I can forgive you for this, Alexander. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." He looked at her with such intensity that it felt like his gaze could reach into her soul. "I don't expect you to forgive me, not right now. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that I'm here, and I'll be here, no matter what you decide. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right, even if it takes a lifetime. I just need you to know that I care about you. More than I ever thought I could care for someone." Isabella's heart thudded painfully in her chest as she looked at him. She wanted to believe him, she wanted to give him another chance, but how could she? How could she allow herself to trust someone who had been living a lie, someone who had kept her in the dark when she had given him her heart? For a long moment, they just sat there, neither of them knowing what to say, neither of them willing to break the fragile silence that stretched between them. The weight of the conversation hung heavily in the air, and Isabella felt as though the ground beneath her was shifting, threatening to give way. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to forgive you. I want to, I really do, but I don't know how." Alexander's expression softened, and for the first time in a long while, there was no hint of the arrogant, confident man she had met months ago. There was only a man, broken and vulnerable, reaching out in the only way he knew how. "I understand," he said softly. "And I'm not asking for forgiveness. Not yet. I just wanted you to know the truth. No more lies. No more hiding." Isabella nodded slowly, her emotions tangled in a knot she couldn't seem to untangle. "I need time, Alexander," she whispered. "I need time to figure this out, to process everything. I don't know what the future holds, but right now, I can't make any promises." He reached out for her hand, his touch gentle, almost pleading. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Waiting. No matter how long it takes." Still, every time she tried to move forward, the doubts crept in. Could she trust him? Could she let go of the past and give him another chance? The questions lingered, unspoken but ever present, as she navigated the days with a sense of uncertainty hanging over her like a storm cloud. One evening, a week later, she found herself sitting in a cafe, staring into the steaming cup of coffee in front of her. The world outside was bustling with life, but inside, there was only the heavy quiet of her thoughts. It had been a while since she had seen Alexander, and despite everything, despite the hurt, she felt the absence of him in her life. Her phone buzzed on the table, and she glanced at the screen. It was him. "Can we talk?" She stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. Her heart raced, her stomach tightening. She hadn't replied to his messages in days, unsure of how to navigate the space between them. But something in her chest, something small, fragile, urged her to respond. "Where?" she typed back. "Same place as before. I'll be waiting." It wasn't much, but it was enough. Isabella knew she had to go. She had to face him. But the thought of it filled her with a mixture of dread and longing. The emotions were tangled, impossible to sort out, but she couldn't ignore them anymore. When she arrived at the cafe, Alexander was already there, sitting at their usual table by the window. He was looking out at the city, his posture stiff, as though waiting for something or someone. She hesitated for a moment before walking toward him, her breath catching in her throat. The moment she stepped closer, his eyes met hers, and she saw the relief that flashed in his gaze. It was only for a moment, but it was enough to make her heart ache. "Isabella," he said softly, standing up as she approached. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "I'm glad you came." "I almost didn't," she admitted, her voice unsteady. "But here I am." He gave a small, almost bitter laugh. "I understand why you might have hesitated. After everything, I don't expect you to just forgive me, or trust me again right away." She nodded, swallowing hard. The weight of his words was like a pressure on her chest. She didn't know what to say, how to begin this conversation, when so much had been left unsaid. But she had to try. She had to. "Why do you want to talk?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you need from me now, Alexander?" He seemed to shrink a little under her gaze, his face filled with a quiet sadness. "I need you to know that I am truly sorry. For everything. For lying to you. For keeping you in the dark about my past. I never should have done that. I was selfish, and I hurt you, and I can't undo that." Isabella's heart ached at the sincerity in his words, but the pain she felt from everything that had happened made it hard to let herself believe him completely. "And what now? What do you want from me, now that I know everything?" He hesitated for a moment, his eyes searching hers, looking for something she wasn't sure he'd find. "I don't know what you'll choose. I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me. But I want to try. I want to prove to you that I'm not the same man who lied to you, who kept you at arm's length." She took a deep breath, fighting the emotions that threatened to overtake her. She couldn't make any promises. She couldn't promise him that she would forgive him or that things would go back to the way they were. She didn't know if that was even possible. But a small part of her, just a small part, wanted to believe in the possibility of something different, something better. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she said quietly, the words feeling like a weight in her mouth. "I don't know if I can let go of the hurt. But I also can't just walk away from everything we've shared. I can't pretend that it doesn't mean something to me." He nodded, his expression pained but understanding. "I know. And I don't expect you to just forget everything. But I need you to know that I'm here. I'm here, trying to be a better man, and I'll keep trying, no matter how long it takes." Isabella looked down at the table, feeling the tension between them. She could feel the rawness of his words, the vulnerability that lay underneath his carefully constructed walls. She didn't know if she was ready to let herself fall for him again. But she also didn't know if she could walk away, knowing that the man sitting across from her was trying to change, trying to make things right. "I don't know what the future holds," she said softly, meeting his gaze once more. "I don't know if I'm ready to go back to you, to trust you again. But I'm willing to try. To see where this can go. But it's going to take time, Alexander. Time for me to heal, and time for you to prove that you really can be the man I thought you were." He exhaled slowly, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I can do that," he said, his voice steady now, filled with quiet determination. "I'll do whatever it takes." For the first time in days, Isabella felt something stir within her, a faint glimmer of hope. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, or what it would mean for them, but for the first time, she was willing to take the next step. She was willing to see if forgiveness was possible, if love could survive the wounds they had inflicted on each other. Isabella spent most of her time at work, trying to bury herself in the tasks that required her attention. The physical distance from Alexander helped quiet the constant buzz in her mind, but whenever he called or texted, a flicker of something deep inside her, a mixture of hope and fear, stirred awake. She hadn't seen him in nearly a week, the space between them growing more pronounced with every passing day. It wasn't that she didn't want to see him. It was that the more she saw him, the more she felt like she was walking through a fog, unsure of what was real and what was just her own longing. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, her phone rang. The familiar name flashed on the screen, and her heart skipped a beat before she could stop herself. Alexander. She hadn't heard from him in days, and the weight of the call hung between them like an unspoken question. Isabella, his voice was soft, but there was an unmistakable urgency in it. Can we meet? I need to talk to you. She froze. The words, so simple, carried a gravity that sent a chill down her spine. He sounded different, more vulnerable than before, as though something had shifted in him. Something important. She hesitated, unsure of what to say. She had been expecting this moment, but now that it was here, she didn't know if she was ready. Where? The same place as last time. I'll be waiting. There was no room for refusal, no second thoughts. Something in the tone of his voice, the weight of the words, told her she couldn't avoid him any longer. She needed to know what he had to say, even if the thought of it filled her with dread. When she arrived at the cafe, the usual warmth of the place seemed muted, the light from the windows casting long shadows across the floor. Alexander was sitting at their usual spot, looking out the window with a distant expression. His posture was rigid, like he was bracing for something. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside her as she walked toward him. He turned when he heard her steps, and the moment their eyes met, something in his expression softened. But there was something else, something buried beneath the surface. His eyes were heavy, as if he were carrying a weight too large for one person to bear. Isabella, he said, standing up slowly. There was an ache in his voice, a rawness she hadn't heard before. Thank you for coming. She didn't sit down immediately. She just stood there, feeling the tension between them thickening with every passing second. What is it, Alexander? She asked, her voice quieter than she intended. What's going on? You've been distant, and now this. What is it that you need to tell me? He stared at her for a long moment, as if searching for the right words, but when he spoke, his voice trembled with emotion. I don't know how to say this, but I need you to understand, there's something I haven't told you. Something that has to do with the past I've been running from. She felt the air shift, the ground beneath her feet suddenly unstable. Her heart picked up its pace as she took a cautious step forward. What is it, Alexander? She repeated, her voice shaking slightly now. What's in your past that you've been hiding? I didn't want to tell you this, because I didn't think I deserved to be loved, he said, the pain in his voice cutting through her like a knife. But I was married before. And I had a family, before everything fell apart. I left them. I ran away from them, from all the responsibilities I had. Isabella's stomach dropped, the words sinking into her like stones in water. What do you mean, you left them? You abandoned them? He nodded slowly, looking down at his hands. Yes. I thought that if I left, if I just walked away, I could start over. I could be someone new, someone better. But I didn't realize the damage I was causing. I thought I could run away from my past, from the mistakes I made. But you deserve the truth, Isabella. I owe you that much. The words hit her like a slap, the pain radiating outward from the center of her chest. Her thoughts were spinning, each one more jumbled than the last. Why didn't you tell me this before? Why wait until now? Why let me fall for you, if you were hiding something like this? Her voice was barely above a whisper, filled with a combination of anger and disbelief. I didn't want to hurt you, he said, his voice thick with regret. I thought I could keep you at arm's length, protect you from the mess I've made of my life. But I see now. I see how wrong I was. You deserve better than that. I've been selfish, Isabella. I've been so selfish. She could feel the tears threatening to spill, but she held them back, forcing herself to stay composed. Selfish, she whispered, her heart aching with the weight of his confession. You lied to me, Alexander. You kept so much from me. You let me believe you were someone you're not. How do you expect me to just move past that? He stepped closer, his hand reaching out as if to comfort her, but she stepped back, not ready to let him get too close. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," he said quietly. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I don't deserve your trust. But I need you to know that I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance, just a chance, to show you that I'm not that man anymore. That I'm not the man who ran from everything." The words hung in the air, thick with emotion, each one more difficult than the last. Isabella could see the sincerity in his eyes, the genuine regret, but she also saw the scars, the broken pieces of the man standing before her. She had wanted to believe him. She had wanted to trust him. But how could she, knowing the depths of his lies? "I don't know if I can do this, Alexander," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can go back to you after everything you've kept hidden." He lowered his head, his expression a mixture of shame and longing. "I understand. And I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now. But please, Isabella, please understand that I am trying. I'm trying to be the man you deserve." Isabella stared at him, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The future was so uncertain, so unclear. She didn't know if she could ever forgive him. But as she stood there, her heart torn between anger and the faintest glimmer of hope, she knew one thing for sure: her life, and Alexander's, had irrevocably changed. And no matter what happened next, she couldn't go back to the way things were before. "I need time," she said softly, the words feeling like a final plea. "Time to think. Time to decide if I can trust you again." He nodded slowly, the pain in his eyes evident, but there was a quiet resolve there too. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting." As the sun began to set on the 6th day since their conversation, Isabella found herself standing at the window of her apartment, staring out at the fading light. Her phone buzzed on the counter behind her, and she turned, instinctively knowing who it was before she even checked. It was Alexander. Part of her wanted to ignore it, wanted to stay in the comfort of her solitude and uncertainty. But another part of her, one that she had tried to suppress, knew that this moment would come. She needed to face him, to make a choice. With trembling hands, she picked up the phone. "I can't stop thinking about you. Please meet me. I need to see you. There's something I have to say, something I can't leave unsaid." The message was simple, but the weight of it hung heavy in her chest. She closed her eyes for a moment, her heart pounding as she weighed her options. It wasn't just the promise of reconciliation that tugged at her. It was the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could forgive him. Maybe they could rebuild something together. But what if she was wrong? What if this was just another lie, another broken promise? Finally, with a shaky breath, she typed her reply. "Where?" "The park, near the fountain. 7 p.m. I'll be waiting." By the time she arrived at the park, the sky had darkened, the stars faintly visible above, and the gentle hum of city life in the distance was a stark contrast to the quiet around her. She walked slowly, her steps heavy with the weight of the decision that loomed over her. The fountain, illuminated softly by nearby lights, was where she had agreed to meet him, the place where they had first begun to bridge the gap between their worlds. When she spotted him, her heart skipped a beat. He was standing by the fountain, his silhouette outlined by the soft glow of the lights. He seemed so still, so distant, as though he was caught in his own battle, just as she was. His eyes locked with hers as soon as she came into view, and for a moment, they just stared at each other, neither of them sure how to break the silence that had built between them. "Isabella," he said, his voice soft but filled with urgency. "Thank you for coming." She nodded, her throat tight with emotions she couldn't put into words. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. She just stood there, staring at him, trying to reconcile the man who stood before her with the man who had hidden so much from her. "I've been thinking about what you said," he continued, taking a small step toward her. "And I've realized something. I've realized how much I've hurt you, how much I've taken from you without giving anything back in return. I didn't think I had anything left to give, but I was wrong. I can give you honesty. I can give you the truth. And I need you to know that I will keep trying. Every single day. Isabella's heart ached. It was all she had wanted to hear from him, the truth, the willingness to face the consequences of his actions. But was it enough? Could it ever be enough? "You've hurt me, Alexander," she whispered, her voice trembling as she took a hesitant step toward him. "I don't know if you truly understand how deeply you've hurt me. You didn't just lie to me. You kept me in the dark about things that should have been shared from the beginning. You let me trust you, let me believe that we could have something real, but how can I trust you again? How can I ever believe that I won't be hurt again?" His face fell, the pain in his eyes so raw that it made her chest tighten. "I know," he said softly. "And I understand why you feel that way. I wish I could go back and change everything. I wish I could have told you from the start. But all I can do now is ask for your forgiveness. I can't take back the lies, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to prove to you that I'm not that man anymore." Isabella felt the tears threaten to fall, but she held them back, forcing herself to stay composed. She wasn't sure if she could trust him again. She wasn't sure if she even wanted to trust him again. But she couldn't deny the pull she still felt toward him, the aching longing that had never quite faded. "What if I can't forgive you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if the damage is too much? What if I can never forget what you've done?" His eyes locked onto hers, the desperation in them palpable. "Then I'll wait," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll wait for as long as it takes. I'll wait for you to heal, for you to find a way to trust me again. But I won't give up on us. I can't. Not now. Not after everything we've shared." Isabella felt the weight of his words settle over her like a heavy blanket, pressing down on her chest. She didn't know if she was strong enough to take the next step. She didn't know if she was ready to risk her heart again, knowing the potential for even more hurt. But she couldn't deny that the thought of walking away from him, of ending this chapter without trying, felt like a loss she wasn't ready to face. "Why didn't you tell me about your son sooner?" she asked, her voice soft, the question lingering in the air between them like an unspoken truth. "Why did you keep that from me? That's not something you hide. That's not something you wait to reveal." He winced, his expression filled with shame. "I was scared. Scared of what it would mean, scared that you wouldn't accept me. I didn't want to be the man who failed his family, the man who walked away from everything. But I am that man. I can't change what I did, but I want to make it right. I want to be someone worthy of your trust." Isabella closed her eyes for a moment, her mind racing with the weight of his confession. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, as she tried to find the words to say. Her heart was torn, conflicted between the man she had once loved and the man standing before her, broken and pleading. Finally, she took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of sadness and hope. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you've done," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to give us a chance. But it has to be real, Alexander. No more lies. No more secrets. If we're going to do this, it has to be with honesty, even when it hurts." His face softened, a glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. "I promise you, Isabella," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll never lie to you again. I'll give you everything I have, everything I am. I will show you, day by day, that I'm worthy of your trust." Every time Alexander reached out to her, she felt the familiar flutter of anticipation in her chest, followed by a wave of anxiety. It wasn't just the fear of being hurt, it was the realization that she had already invested so much of herself into this. Could she keep going? Could she trust him again? Could they move past the ghosts of their shared history? She spent the following weeks in a kind of limbo, unsure of what to do with the emotions that seemed to pull her in every direction. When they saw each other, it was always the same, the gentle gestures, the quiet apologies, the promises to change. And though she saw the sincerity in his eyes, there were moments when the shadows of the past resurfaced, reminding her of the pain he had caused. Then one evening, everything came crashing down. It started like any other night. She had agreed to meet him at a cafe, a quiet place they had frequented together before. But as soon as she stepped inside, she felt the shift in the air. The tension was palpable, thicker than usual. Alexander was already there, sitting at a corner table, his back to her. The moment he turned around and saw her, she could see something was different. His eyes, once warm and familiar, were now clouded with uncertainty and something deeper, something that looked like fear. "Isabella," he said softly, his voice cracking as he stood up to greet her. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by an unmistakable tension. "I'm glad you came." "I almost didn't," she replied, her voice shaky despite her attempt to sound steady. "But you said there was something important you needed to tell me." He nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. I've been thinking a lot about what we've talked about. About what I've done. And there's something I need to come clean about. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Her heart tightened. She had heard this before. He had promised honesty, and now, here it was again, the dreaded moment when he would confess something else that would make her question everything. "What is it, Alexander?" she asked, her voice low, barely more than a whisper. "What is it this time?" He swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly as he placed them on the table. "I haven't been completely honest with you. About my son." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. She had never expected this. Not after everything they had already gone through, not after all the apologies and promises. "What about him?" she asked, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. What could there possibly be to tell now? His voice was strained, as though each word he spoke was dragging him deeper into a place he didn't want to go. "I'm not just his father, Isabella. I'm also responsible for something I've never told you. Something I should have told you the moment we met." A wave of confusion washed over her, and she took a step back, the room suddenly feeling too small. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her heart racing in her chest. "What responsibility? What are you talking about?" He looked away for a moment, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for the courage to continue. "I've been paying for his life, his mother's life. After everything fell apart with them, after I left, I didn't just abandon them. I made sure they were financially stable. I kept them comfortable, kept them hidden, far away from my world. I kept them hidden from you." Isabella's mind spun. She had never suspected that there was more to the story. She had always thought that the separation, the abandonment, had been the worst of it, but this was a betrayal on a level she hadn't anticipated. He had kept his son, and the mother of his child, hidden from her, shielded from her, while she had believed they were building something honest. "Why?" she breathed, her voice raw. "Why would you do that? Why would you lie to me about this? About them? And why now? Why tell me this now, after everything?" Alexander's face twisted with pain, his voice barely audible as he spoke. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought if I kept them out of the picture, if I kept everything hidden, I could protect you from the mess I'd created. I didn't want to hurt you any more than I already had. But now I see that I've hurt you in a way that's worse than anything I could have imagined." Isabella's breath caught in her throat as the words settled in. She wanted to scream, to lash out at him, but the words wouldn't come. Her mind was a swirl of confusion, disbelief, and the sharp sting of betrayal. She had given him a chance, had let him back into her life, only to discover that there were still layers of lies hidden beneath his confessions. She took a step back, feeling the walls close in around her. "I don't understand," she whispered. You kept all of this from me. You kept them hidden from me. You've been living two lives, Alexander. How am I supposed to trust you again? How am I supposed to believe you after this?" He reached out, his hand trembling as he tried to close the space between them, but she stepped back, unwilling to let him get any closer. "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I know I don't deserve your trust, Isabella. I don't deserve anything from you. But please, I'm begging you, let me make it right. Let me show you that I can be the man you deserve." The tears that she had been holding back finally spilled over, her chest tight with the weight of everything that had happened. "I want to believe you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I want to believe that you've changed, that we can make this work. But I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can live with the lies anymore. I don't know if I can keep trusting someone who has kept so much from me. The silence between them stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Alexander's face crumpled with the weight of her words, and for a moment, he seemed to shrink before her. The man who had once seemed so certain, so powerful, was now broken, defeated by his own lies. I know, he whispered again. I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me. Not now, not yet. But I will wait. I will wait for as long as it takes. Isabella didn't know what to say. She didn't know what the future held, or if she could ever forgive him for what he had done. But she knew, deep down, that the decision she was facing wasn't just about Alexander. It was about herself. It was about whether she could heal from the pain, whether she could rebuild her trust, not just in him, but in herself. As she turned to leave, her heart heavy with the weight of the moment, she felt Alexander's eyes on her, pleading with her to stay, to give him another chance. But the road ahead was unclear, and for now, all she could do was walk away, carrying with her the burden of decisions yet to be made. She hadn't seen him since their conversation in the park, and though a part of her missed him, the man who had once made her feel safe and cherished, the rest of her was still reeling from the weight of his lies. She couldn't decide if it was the truth that had freed her or the truth that had broken her. Every time she thought she was ready to move forward, she would think of him, of his apology, of the desperate look in his eyes, and she would find herself standing still again, lost in a fog of uncertainty. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she received a text from him. I'm coming by. I know you need space, but I can't stay away any longer. Please, let me explain. Her heart clenched at the words. The tension that had been building between them had finally reached its breaking point. She hadn't responded to his calls or messages in days, but the desperation in his words, the rawness that he was finally showing, made her feel like she had no choice but to hear him out. When he arrived at her apartment, it was late, much later than she expected, but somehow, it felt like the moment was meant to happen this way. The world was quiet, the city streets outside bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights, and she felt like she was standing at the edge of a precipice. Everything in her screamed for her to turn away, to protect herself, to shut the door in his face and walk away from the pain. But another part of her, the part that still loved him, that still wanted to believe, couldn't do it. She opened the door, her breath catching as she saw him standing there, his posture tense, his eyes filled with a storm of emotions. He was dressed in a simple black jacket and jeans, his hair slightly disheveled, as though he had been running through his own thoughts just as much as she had. But there was no arrogance in his expression anymore, no walls protecting him. There was only regret and raw vulnerability. Isabella, he said quietly, his voice soft but filled with a pleading urgency. I know I've hurt you. I know I've lost your trust. But I'm asking for one more chance. One more chance to show you who I really am. She stood there, the door still half open, her body frozen. The words he had spoken were so familiar, and yet this time, they didn't feel like empty promises. This time, they felt like a lifeline that she wasn't sure she was willing to grab onto. She swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. Why now? She whispered, her voice trembling. Why after everything? After all the lies? Why come to me now? His eyes searched hers, as though trying to find the answer to that question. Because I've spent every moment since we last spoke thinking about what I've done. About how I've hurt you. And I can't keep running from it anymore. I can't keep pretending like I didn't mess everything up. I know I can't take back the lies, but I can be honest with you now. Completely honest. Isabella felt the weight of his words settle over her like a heavy blanket. She had heard promises before. She had heard him beg for her forgiveness. But this time, there was something different in his eyes, something that told her he wasn't asking for forgiveness just because he needed it. He was asking because he needed to be redeemed, not just for her, but for himself. I don't know if I can believe you anymore, she said softly, her voice strained. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Alexander took a small step toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't expect things to just go back to normal. But I need you to know this, I am sorry. I am so deeply sorry for what I've done. I can't take back the past, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. Even if it means waiting forever for you to trust me again. Her heart broke at the sincerity in his voice. She had wanted this, had wanted him to come to her, to admit his wrongs, to show her that he was still capable of being the man she had once believed in. But now that it was happening, she wasn't sure she was ready. She wasn't sure she was strong enough to face this kind of vulnerability, not after everything they had been through. I want to believe you, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I want to believe that we can have something real. But I don't know how to let go of the past. I don't know how to forgive you for all the pain you've caused. He closed the distance between them, standing right in front of her, his hands trembling as he reached out to touch her arm. I understand. And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I'm asking for the chance to show you that I can be the man you deserve. I want to prove to you that I'm not the same person who lied to you, who ran away. I am here now. I'm here, willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. The silence between them stretched, thick with the weight of the moment. Isabella felt as though she were standing on the edge of a cliff, torn between the past she couldn't forget and the future that seemed so uncertain. Could she truly forgive him? Could she trust him again after everything? But in that moment, as she looked into his eyes, she realized something. The man standing before her, broken, raw, and completely exposed, wasn't asking for her forgiveness out of convenience. He wasn't asking for her to heal him. He was asking for a chance to heal with her. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. I don't know how to do this, Alexander, she said softly, the tears falling freely now. But I want to try. I want to see if we can find a way back to each other. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm willing to take the first step. His face softened, and for the first time in weeks, she saw the hope in his eyes. That's all I'm asking for. One step. And I'll walk beside you every step of the way. Isabella nodded, feeling the weight of the decision she had just made settle over her. She wasn't sure what the future held, or if they could ever rebuild what they had lost. But for the first time, she felt like she was ready to take that step. But despite the uncertainty, despite the vulnerability that felt like an open wound, there was something inside her, something she couldn't deny, that wanted to believe. She wanted to believe that they could rebuild. She wanted to trust him again, even if it meant taking that leap of faith, even if it felt terrifying. One evening, as she was sitting at her kitchen table, a soft knock echoed through the apartment. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she hesitated. It had been a quiet few days since their last meeting, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face him again, to dive back into the rawness of their emotions. But she had promised herself that she would try. That she would give them both the chance to rebuild something that was broken. She opened the door slowly, and there he stood, Alexander, looking just as he always had, but now, there was something different about him. Something more tender, more fragile. His eyes were searching hers, filled with that same quiet desperation she had seen before. But this time, there was no bravado, no distance. There was only vulnerability. Isabella, he said softly, his voice carrying a weight that she could feel deep in her chest. Can we talk? She swallowed, unsure of what to say, but the look in his eyes, the plea for understanding, for another chance, made her step aside, wordlessly inviting him in. As he entered, the space between them felt heavy, the unspoken words hanging thick in the air. I've been thinking about everything, he said, his voice faltering as he ran a hand through his hair, clearly trying to find the right words. About you. About us. And about how much I've hurt you. And I can't carry this any longer. Isabella's heart tightened in her chest. She hadn't been sure what to expect when he came, but she hadn't expected this raw honesty that seemed to pour out of him like an overflowing river. I don't understand, she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. You've already told me everything, Alexander. I don't know what else there is to say. He took a step toward her, his expression tormented. "There's one thing I never told you, one thing that's been eating at me since the day I left. And I need you to know it, because I can't live with the weight of it any longer." She felt her stomach drop. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander's eyes filled with anguish, and for a moment, he looked like he might break. He opened his mouth to speak but hesitated, as though the words were too heavy to say. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I never wanted to leave you. I thought I had to. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that I would lose myself, that I wasn't good enough for you, that I would fail you the way I failed my family. I convinced myself that running away was the only way to protect you." Isabella felt the flood of emotions surge through her, the sorrow, the pain, the relief. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected him to admit the depth of his fear, the depth of his own insecurities. But hearing him say it, hearing the vulnerability in his voice, shifted something in her. "You were afraid," she echoed, her heart aching for him, for them both. "Afraid of what?"